looks like a river, but it's really not. It's part of a lake. And on either side of us, you see tussocks growing. And this channel has to be maintained every 2 to 3 years because the growth will come in eventually and close it again. So this is not a river, this is part of a lake. And the levels go up and down, but there's very little flow in this lake.
Today we are at Point Lonesome Lake, part of the Sala-Apopka chain of lakes in Citrus County, Florida, observing the effects over time of humans modifying the natural hydrology, which has resulted in the lakes becoming overwhelmed by floating mats of vegetation called tussocks.
We have a bunch of spatterdock along the shore here, and it is a native plant, really pretty yellow flowers, but it is a primary aggressor for the creation of a tussock, from what I understand, because of the root system being so thick and gets muck-like and accumulates sediment, and it starts forming this little island that other plants can come in and start growing in.
Over here we can see an example of a cypress tree growing in the water and probably attached to some sort of formation of a tussocks. The buttressing at the bottom is what gives it a nice base for it to be stabilized in the water.
Eventually this will continue to grow and additional trees will grow and eventually become a true wetland. Every year some of the plant material dies, it falls to the bottom of the lake, and eventually year after year it gets thicker and thicker and becomes an area where trees can grow on it. This is a good example of cypress trees growing on unstable ground. They were able to seed and start on top of the floating material, and they started to take roots. But we recently had Hurricane Helene come through, and most probably these trees are bending over due to the wind force, which was counterclockwise, and it would be hitting those trees. And because the roots are very unstable, it's not on solid soil, as a result the trees bent over.
The tussocks are blocking vital sunlight, breaking down and covering the lake bottoms with feet of silt. This increase in deadened material and the low dissolved oxygen concentrations beneath the tussocks are actually reducing fish habitats. One in particular being the largemouth bass, which requires its eggs to be laid on a solid sandy foundation. If laid in mucky, sediment-filled lake bottoms, the eggs sink down and don't get enough sun and warmth to hatch.
Some people call it muck, call it sediment, detrital material. There's all different types of words to use. So I like to call it sediment. And we're going to go take a sample of the sediment and attempt to see how thick it is. We have a clear 2-inch sample tube, and the end is sharpened so it'll cut through. And we will take out as deep as we can go. But we might not be able to get all the way down to the bottom. But let's give it a try. I'll do it right here. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to go today.
No, it won't budge. Man, you can't. It's like really in there.
It's like really in there. What you're going to do is you're going to use the engines to take it out. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, full power. Okay, so we got a bunch of, look at this stuff here. Wow. A good sample, and we don't see white sand yet. So it's actually deeper than this, but it's a pretty good indication of what's in there. And you can see has more of white roots here, and then it gets darker and darker and darker toward the end. So with time it starts to decompose more and more. The other thing is that as you go deeper and deeper, there's less oxygen. So this might have oxygen in this area for the roots, but it becomes anoxic, no oxygen. And that's really bad for a lake if a lake becomes anoxic. But it's even deeper than that, so that's 16.5 inches. This is a good example of what's on the top. This is what was on the top. And you can see that's some fibrous roots, healthy roots. They're white. They're active, so that means there's a lot of oxygen in the upper layer, or else the roots wouldn't be here. But we're not going to find any of that in the lower portion. The question came up, how did the lake get like this? Well, prior to any mankind intervention, there were no level control structures or flood control structures. And at that point in time, the lakes would vary naturally. The water levels could drop substantially. The tussocks and all the other types of vegetation would dry out, and there would be fires that could start. Those fires burnt away that year's growth, which was very minimal at that point in time. And when the rainy season started, the lake started to fill up again naturally and wash out all the ashes. And basically the lakes had a white sand original base. So that would be an annual cycle, and because it was done annually, there was no massive growth of plant material and tussocks as you see today. So as a result of all of this, we've seen massive growth of tussocks and other type of vegetation, which has ruined navigation. It's affected the health and welfare of the fish and the fish population. Some say this is now a wetland. My position is this is a man-made wetland. But if you want to go back to restoring it to its original condition, you want to, as much as possible, get it down to the original white sand lake bed. That is the entire scope of work as funded by the FDEP for 100 acres here at Point Lonesome Lake.
Okay, so we're parked on a tussock right now.
Which is a good example of the fact that this is a deep hole. Look at that, it just falls right. Oh, this is a good example. Look at this. Yeah, but this is especially interesting. So this is definitely a floating tussocks. Look at that.
Wow.
Early formation of a floating tussock.
There it goes.
Look at that. And this water is very deep through here. This could be a very deep area. We're going to have to bring in some harvesters and some large heavy equipment to take it out, load it on barges, and put it ashore. The sediment is very rich and is great for traditional farming as well as pasture land for cattle. So it has a lot of benefits. It is very rich soil, and we reuse it after we take it out of the lake.